Does anybody feel like they've lost like the recognition of time? I mean, one thing is you kind of forget what day it is, but if we think about like length of time, it's hard to think even about how long we've been doing this thing. I mean, I feel like Tasso Talks has always been a part of my morning. It's hard to believe it's only been a few weeks. I feel like Tammy in the kitchen has just always been here. So I wonder if it's been a really long time or not that long. You guys sensing that same kind of time confusion? Because we're in this 55-day period, and it's not like a usual program, honestly, because normally you're so aware of, I'm 1 week in, I'm 2 weeks in, because you know what a weekend feels like. You know what a Monday feels like. But it is kind of different right now. So thankfully, I've been keeping track, and we're at day 21. Some of you I know are here for the first time, and that's okay. Did you miss anything? Yeah, but is it going to hurt you? No, it's better to just pick up and start with us right now and do a 34-day program than to not do a program at all. And I know there are lots of people sitting home eating really bad foods, and I have to tell you, it was my birthday, and I did enjoy some birthday cake with ice cream, and it was really good cake, so I had some more the next day. And the sad thing is there's a little bit of cake left. So I don't know what's going to happen tonight. But we are heading into a new phase, and that's good, because I'll do what people do. When I eat my cake, if I do, I'll go, well, I'll start my good diet tomorrow. People do that, right? So we're heading through this 50-day period, and I had a plan laid out, and 55 days falls into a period of, can you guys all hear me? I know Troy is here, but do you guys hear me? Give me a yes. Okay, good. Thank you, Gina, John, Ariel, Yanira. So here was the overall plan, but I've been following, and we are now entering week 4. So this becomes day 21. So if you read across this line, week 4, we're going to focus on fat release, which does not include birthday cake. Thankfully, we're just beginning week 4. The functional 6, now that looks familiar, and that's intentional. And then at the end of that line, under nutrition, it says glycogen depletion. Well, that's kind of new. So I'm going to introduce you to a term, recomp, and it's not a real word. It's one of the philisms, a philosophy, but it really means recompose or recomposition. And that's what we're going to start to do. So up until now, we've worked in enhancing the systems of our body, which we'll continue to enhance. We've worked on speeding metabolism, which we'll continue to do. But now we're going to work on, all right, Tasso is having issues again. Please tell me, is it a philosophy? Is it Tasso or is it me? Because if it's me, I'll pick up a different phone. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I cutting in and out? Sorry, Tass. It's you, brother. So for recomposing our bodies, we're going to do what we've been doing plus a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to guess it's not me. If some of you are hearing me okay, it can't be me, right? So just like the lawn people came here at 7 o'clock, maybe your internet is doing some weird things right now. But I'm going to keep going because, as Greg pointed out, nothing is normal right now. So as we start to recompose, we are going to enjoy the functional 6 routine. We are also going to enjoy brief duration cardio with small outbursts. We're going to do carb manipulation, glycogen depletion. We're going to sleep and drink water. We're going to laugh, love, and listen, and we're going to strengthen the power of creative tension. So all of this sounds really good, right? This doesn't sound like you're deprived of anything. This really sounds like a really good week ahead. And I want you to believe that because this will look familiar for those of you who were here last week. A person is limited only by the thoughts that he or she choose. So I want you to just choose that thought, that this is going to be a great week. We have 34 days to go. I have programs that run 17 weeks, 13 weeks, 8 weeks. There's no magic in the number of weeks. And I will tell you that recently, I released a 7-day metabolic reboot program. We launched it at Biohackers, and many of my coaches implemented it. And I have to say, it's science. It's not just the number of days. It's science. It's putting together all of these principles. And we had clients who lost 5, 6, 7 pounds of fat in a week, literally, and there was no trickery. So when we look at this and we go, well, 34 days, a lot can happen in 34 days. So what I did today is I sent out a question to some smart people that I know from all different fields, and I said, tell me one thing that can happen in 30 days, and here's a short list. A baby can go from learning to crawl to standing unassisted. That came from a friend who recently had a child. The moon can orbit the Earth. You can drive the perimeter of the United States, stopping to spend an 8-hour day at 15 locations, getting 6 hours of sleep every night. That's not across the country. That's like the perimeter, like down along Texas, up the Pacific Coast Highway. That's a lot. You can grow a beard. I know some guys who grow a beard in like 3 days, but 30 days you can grow a serious beard, and some people could be like ZZ Top like in 30 days. A baby bird can leave the nest and fly. In 30 days, this came from somebody who actually had this experience. You can fall in love, break up, and fall in love all over again. You can hatch a caterpillar from an egg and witness it turn into a butterfly. Now, it would have to be a butterfly egg. Don't just look at an egg and expect a caterpillar to come out. You can grow mature radishes from seeds, which has always been a fantasy of mine. You can housebreak a puppy, which has never been a fantasy of mine. You can add pounds of muscle, which of course came from an exercise physiologist. You can lose pounds of fat, and you can become a morning person even if you weren't one already. So you could do a lot of things in 30 days. So if I'm telling you have 34 days, if you have any limiting thoughts, get rid of them, because you absolutely 1,000% can lose weight. Do you guys believe me? Yes. Now, let's get a little more specific. Because I've had people throughout the years come to my office and say, I want to lose weight. And I would facetiously sometimes say, which body part would you like us to amputate? And of course, they would get irritated, annoyed, shocked. But it was the opportunity to help them see that it's not just the pounds they want to lose. They want to look better and feel better. And yes, they would like to weigh less, but not for the sake of weighing less. They want to really be fat. So the worst invention ever was the scale. It is a horrible, horrible thing. And you should never, ever, ever use it again. Instead of thinking about losing pounds, we have to get really clear on what we want to lose. And we want to lose fat. And I just told you, we saw it in 7 days. Metabolic reboot. A whole lot of people, I'm not talking about a couple of people, lost a whole lot of fat. So it's the same science that I'm sharing with you here. So I want you to know, because remember how vital your thoughts are, that even if you're just starting, begin the program today as it's laid out, and I'm promising you, you will lose fat. But in order to understand how to really lose fat, because fat doesn't just melt, in order to understand how to really lose fat, how to burn it as fuel, we have to understand a little bit more about it, because otherwise people get fooled. You know, I remember those, they called them herbal wraps, and they were like ace bandages, and they'd wrap you up like a mummy. They'd soak them in a liquid. They'd wrap you like a mummy. You'd lay there like a mummy. They'd put on soft music, then they'd unwrap you, and they'd take a tape measure, and they go, look at this, you lost 2 inches on your waist. It's very simply water displacement. 2 days later, they'd come back, and they go, oh man, I blew it. I need another treatment. So it's really easy to get fooled if you don't understand how this fat loss thing works. I'm going to explain it to you, not in a way that's complex, but in a way that I hope you get the aha. So let's start with this. Fat is good. Now, people who want to get rid of fat don't like it when I say that because they don't really understand. They just think fat is bad, but fat is not bad. Fat is good. As a matter of fact, for any male here, if you didn't have any fat coming into your body, you wouldn't have any testosterone. Because fat, lipids, cholesterol is the raw material from which we make hormones. So by that token, fat is good. The membranes of the cells, you know how when I talk about, I call it CI3, cellular integrity, intelligence, and interactivity. Integrity of the cell, the strength and the function of the cell membrane is reliant upon lipids. It is made of a fat layer. Eicosanoids are little hormonal messengers that play a vital role in homeostasis. They stimulate the secretions inside your gut. They play a vital role in driving an appropriate inflammatory response. They cause the uterus to contract when that is necessary. And they also can raise or lower blood pressure, just to name a few things. So these are active little fats in your body. In fact, I'll go down a quick little rabbit trail. Eicosanoids include what are called prostaglandins. And there was a time that I was working with Flex Magazine, and I was interviewing bodybuilders who were using a lot of drugs and anabolics and steroids and growth hormone. And at that time, they were using prostaglandins because they would inject them into their body, and they would cause muscle contraction. And because they had a very short half-life, they'd have to inject themselves like 8 times a day. And I thought, this is really insane. But they were injecting little bits of fat that caused their muscles to grow. And I remember somebody telling me, you can't ever go anywhere near your stomach because it'll cause your stomach to contract and it might make your heart contract. And I thought, are you people crazy? But there are purposes for fats other than just making you feel bad about yourself when you look in the mirror. Subcutaneous fat, which if you have too much of will make you feel bad about yourself when you look in the mirror, actually protects you. You know that time you got hit by a baseball? Thankfully, you had fat to absorb some of that impact because that could have really hurt you. And visceral fat, the fat that we hear is really bad in excess, but it cushions the internal organs. So let's not demonize fat. Let's just understand this. Fat, while it's good, is bad because too much fat makes it bad. Too much fat increases the risk of virtually every chronic disease. I could spell it out disease by disease, but let's just go with a very generalized statement right now. And increases in visceral fat, that same fat that cushions your internal organs, it is active. That fat is active fat. It doesn't just sit there. It creates cytokines. It becomes a factory for cytokines, and cytokines drive inflammation. So when you start to amplify visceral fat and you get more abdominal fat, it feeds itself and creates more and more and more. And that becomes very unhealthy and very challenging for heart health and can absolutely lead to disease. So yeah, we want to get rid of fat usually for cosmetic purposes, but let's understand its role in health too. And let's just understand what's important is we want to get rid of the unsightly fat or the too much visceral fat. Really what we want to do is recompose. We cannot turn muscle into fat or fat into muscle. I know you've met people and you say, oh, the muscle turned into fat. No, it didn't. The muscle atrophied, got smaller, and then the person didn't eat well, and then they got fat. So you can't turn muscle into fat any more than you could turn the chair into the carpet. But we can recompose what our bodies are made of. So if you've ever gone to a personal trainer and they took out those calipers and you cringed and they measured a skin fold and they plugged it into a formula, they were looking at what percentage of your body weight is made up of fat, and there are ideals. So the idea here is through this program, we want to recompose. And if you lost 7 pounds of fat but didn't lose any weight on the scale, and I'm not wishing that on you if you want to lose weight, but if you lost 7 pounds of fat and didn't lose any weight on the scale, that would be really good from a health perspective. And you go, well, how could that be? Well, because you're holding more muscle. And that doesn't mean you added 7 pounds of muscle mass, but you're holding more muscle fuel. Your body is recomposing. So it's not about losing weight. It's about losing fat. From the coaches, can I get an amen to that? So I'm not alone on this. So here's the trick. You want to eat, as I've been sharing with you, in a manner that gives you optimal material from which to build new healthy cells. You don't want to lose lean body mass. You've got to feed the body so it can maintain the muscle you've got. Starving will not work to create a healthy recomposition. It will work in the short term to make you lose weight, but a part of that will be water weight, which is temporary and meaningless, but it's just a trick. And a part of that weight, if you starve, will be muscle weight, and that's not healthy. So the trick is you don't starve, you eat for anabolism and energy, as we have been. and you exercise adequately, but you don't overtrain, because if you overtrain, you break down muscle. I'm sure all of you have seen fat, skinny exercisers. You know, they get on the stair climber and they're on there for an hour. Or they take, 4 classes. Now, can you do 4 classes and stay really fit and lean? Yes, but you've got to feed the body and you've got to stoke metabolism. What happens is when somebody thinks that's the vehicle to lose weight, they wind up wasting muscle tissue. So they literally get fatter as they get smaller because they're losing muscle. So you absolutely want to exercise adequately with the right challenge, but you also have to recover. And keep that in mind when I tell you your workouts still need to be brief. We're going to up the intensity and the time, but we've still got 34 days to go. So I'm asking for you to continue to open up to trusting. And in order to make sure we lose fat and hold on to all the good stuff, you have to create an internal environment, a condition where the body chooses to use fat as energy. Now, think about it. If somebody has 40 extra pounds of fat is very calorically dense. They should be able to easily run 50 or 60 miles if they truly had access to that caloric energy, but they don't. It's locked in. So the thought that exercise burns fat is a flawed thought. You have to create the condition whereby your body is willing to release fat and burn it as fuel, and that's what I'm going to teach you to do. With that, we are not limiting our attention to simply losing fat. We are doing it still maintaining a focus on all of the different systems of the body because they work together. Last week, I shared with you some thoughts from As a Man Thinketh. I gave you the text. If you haven't downloaded it yet, you can. It's in the files. Anybody can get it. It's free. Just go download it. And if you downloaded it and didn't read it, then read it. If you didn't download it, then download it and read it. Downloading is step 1, reading is step 2. But I'm going to give you a part of it. Here's a quote from James Allen, written sometime around 1900. Sow an act, and you reap a habit. This is a really good word. This is a really good word. You know, I searched habits because I was looking for like a graphic to use in the slides, and nuns came up. A lot of pictures of nuns. So sow an act, and you reap a habit. Sow a habit, and you reap a character. Sow a character, and you reap a destiny. So we can shorten that by saying the habits that we develop lead to our destiny. We can make these choices. And habits are created in part by thoughts, but let's look at it a little deeper. Machiavelli said, the human ape is a mimic. We learn by imitation, and we do. You know, a child imitates a parent, and we learn to do things. And if sometimes you get a job in a corporate environment, you imitate. That's how you fake it until you make it, right? So by nature, we imitate. Now, that can be really challenging. Because what if we're imitating people who have a destiny that they're headed toward that is not the one we want? So let's recognize that it's possible that you have inadvertently developed habits that really are not supportive for the outcome you want. We also create habits based on our own perceptions of pain and pleasure. Last week, I spoke at some length about the muscles of mindset, and I'll review them today a little bit. But the relationship between what you're forced by your brain to avoid and what your brain considers as possibility will lead you to create habits. And what you should know now is you can change that relationship, thus you can change your habits. A habit will be formed or strengthened when there's the belief that the ritual, the habitual process that you're going through again and again and again, is leading to a thrilling outcome. You know, people run miles because they're training for the New York Marathon or the Boston Marathon. There's nothing that can make me run that long, honestly. And maybe someday I'll know what that is, but I just have no desire to run 26 miles. But when you see these people training, you know, and going for a 10-mile run or 12-mile run, it's because they're thinking of the marathon. They're working toward the outcome. So when they wake up in the morning and put on their running shoes and mindlessly leave their house, they're developing this habit because they believe it will lead to a thrilling outcome. If somebody goes to a bar and they realize that they only meet members of the opposite sex when they consume a lot of alcohol, they develop the habit of consuming alcohol as soon as they get into the bar because they believe it will lead to the thrilling outcome. As we perform things repetitively, either because we're imitating or we're moving toward what we believe is a thrilling outcome, we form bridges, dendrite bridges, neural wiring. And the more those bridges are strengthened, the more those habits become reinforced and the harder they are to break. And we also form habits based on a dopamine spurt. So there is a part of the brain that is called the nucleus accumbens, and it is the blue section if you're looking at your screen right now. And when you get a dopamine spurt in the nucleus accumbens, you feel really good, and it sends the signals, the red little dots, up to the prefrontal cortex. And it makes you believe that something really good just happened and is about to happen, and you feel really good. So when you do cocaine, you get a dopamine spurt, and you feel really good, and you feel invincible. And then when the cocaine wears off, because this was exogenous, it wasn't your body naturally producing dopamine, it was something outside of you, your own body is trying to return to balance, and it winds up lowering dopamine. And now you feel miserable. So you want for the thing that made you feel good. And that's why the nucleus accumbens is actually the seat of addiction. So all of these things together determine your habits. I spoke to Dr. Bleiweiss, for those of you who heard that little session that we did last week. And, we talked about a smoker. And a smoker wrote in, or the son of a smoker wrote in, saying his mom wants to quit. She's at home. She smokes a lot, but the only way she can quit is to eat a lot of junk food. And what we landed on is it's her belief. That's the problem. It's not the smoking, but what a difficult belief to think you have a choice, smoke or get fat. So she's got to change the belief. But something interesting about smoking. Habitual long-term smokers lose the wiring to the prefrontal cortex. This is really interesting. So remember I told you the PFC is where we create possibility, where you create the future memory? Well, they can't even create a possibility of not smoking. They don't have access to that part of the brain. So it's not rational. They're so wired into the habit that they can't even imagine not smoking. I would guess most of you brush your teeth every day, at least every week. And I would guess that when you brush them, you brush almost all of them. And I don't think any of you started doing this because at 25 years old, you decided, let me try this. I really love the taste of toothpaste. And you got a dopamine spurt. I don't think that's the reason. So why do we brush our teeth every day? Because it's been ingrained. Because what do you tell your kids will happen if they don't brush their teeth? That all their teeth will fall out. So we're ingraining this horrible outcome that they want to avoid at all costs. But not everybody is motivated by moving away from something bad. Some people are motivated by moving towards something good. So we also say, don't you want to have a pretty smile? So it's important for us to realize, especially those of us who work with the public and trying to improve their lives, that not everybody is motivated in the same way. Some people have an internal strategy where they're more motivated to move away from the potential for pain. Other people are more motivated by the pretty smile that they're going to have. So you've got to find the motivation that works for you and use that as a strategy to create new habits. I've heard it said that according to a Yale University study, it takes 21 days to develop a habit. I can find lots of references to that study, but the study never happened. It's just people reading somebody who wrote that there was a study, but the study never took place. But it sounds good, 21 days to develop a habit. It sounds reasonable. If you imitate or you change your wiring, 21 days is reasonable. So if you've been here for 21 days now, I'm hoping that you're forming a habit. I want to make sure that the routine this week does not throw you off your game and contributes to this habit, because this would be a really good habit. So the routine will be familiar. It's the functional 6. The functional 6 is a fun routine. If you don't find it fun, hang out with Holden at his next session and just do it with him. It's fun. And if you feel that it's too challenging, do it with Holly. Look, any of the coaches this week can share with you the functional 6 in a way that's fun. You know that it is a vehicle toward the outcome you want, whether that outcome is moving away from what you don't want or moving toward what you do want. And if you've identified the voice of the EEM to any degree, if you've caught yourself saying can't or but, and you've started to work on your journal and creating a future memory, then you've gotten a sense of what the EEM does and what the PFC does. Well, this routine this week should be aligned with the voice of your PFC. And it is supported by your heroes, nourished by your thoughts, and reinforced by your journal. So everything should work together. The muscles of mindset you now should understand. I'll do a quick review to make sure. The EEM is the emotional experiential memory. It creates avoidance, and it's based on fear and pain. And if it misinterprets something that would have been good or valuable as something that is risk, it will steer you away from that behavior or that habit. And it uses a specific language like, you can't do that, or I know you'd like to, but you shouldn't. So by now, you should, at the very least, be catching yourself in those can'ts and buts. The prefrontal cortex is developed by accessing it like a muscle. So if you've worked at all to create the future memory, if you've thought about a moment in time where you're going to be happy, whether it's 6 pounds lighter or 60 pounds lighter, whether it's lean and ripped or fitting in your clothing better, whatever it is, if you've accessed it and attached emotion to it, then you've utilized your prefrontal cortex. Continue to do that. And now we have to program the RAS, and this is a really good time to do it. The reticular activating system, I told you it's like the GPS of your brain. And if you don't intentionally program it, it gets programmed automatically and usually not in a very good way. I think last week I used the metaphor of it seeing a donut shop. You could drive by that donut shop and never notice it, or you could be compelled to stop there every single day. So the trick to getting control of your own RAS, your own attention, is to take some time today to set your internal GPS, your reticular activating system, for tomorrow. So don't wait until you wake up tomorrow. And by the way, I do this because if I don't, I have a stressful day. I've learned this. Plan your workout time and stick to it. Make it an actual appointment. If you feel that you've got to check your emails first, don't. Because you now have an appointment with your workout. If some voice is telling you to go back to bed, it's the EEM, and tell it to shut up. So plan the workout time today for tomorrow, so at least you have something to follow. You're setting your reticular activating system. And know where you're going to work out and know the circumstance. Like, I've been working out in my driveway. So in my garage, against the door, I have a battle rope, I have dumbbells, I have medicine balls. So I open the garage door and I pull these things outside. So it shouldn't just be, I'm going to work out. What should I do? Where should I do it? Plan it today for tomorrow. Same is true with your food. If you can meal prep and put things in Tupperware so you can grab what you need to grab, I mean, you're home now. So for most of you, this shouldn't be difficult. I go to the grocery store twice a week. That's what I try to keep it to. It's really creepy. I don't love going. But, you know, I need to get stuff for my parents. So I usually do a run on like Wednesday and Sunday. So I've gotten really good at stocking up on the things that I need. So make sure that in advance you get what you need for tomorrow. These things sound so sensible. But if you don't plan them today for tomorrow, you won't do them. And if you start doing this, guess what? Dendrites attach. You form new bridges, and this becomes a habit. I would encourage you to literally schedule your journaling and schedule your meditation. I know somebody who really didn't schedule her meditations until now, because now she does it with you guys at the same times on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. So she shows up. It's become a habit. So you guys should do the same thing. Block it out. And speaking of Ariel, you can put in your calendar the times that you're going to visit with your coaches. There's a schedule. So I was hanging out in Tammy's session a little bit today, and I saw somebody say, "Yay, I'm glad I was able to make it." Great, because you knew she was on at 5 o'clock. If you can, you could always watch the recording, but there's something really great about being there live. So schedule these things. We have such freedom now, even though we feel so restricted, to do things like this, because normally we couldn't. And when I taught you about creative tension, that wasn't just a lesson so you go, "Oh, that's interesting." It's a lesson so you'll develop a habit of standing in your circle of discontent and emotionally traveling to your future memory. It is a very, very powerful exercise. That I told you that creative tension line becomes like a bungee cord, like a slingshot that will propel you to your future memory. And there's no better time than right now to do it. I told you last week the only thing that can shut you down is a very weak PFC, which you're learning to strengthen, an overly restrictive EEM, which you're learning to weaken, or the 4 monsters. But you're no longer plagued by the monsters because you were now introduced to the 4 heroes: clarity, discipline, focus, and planning. And then you have superheroes. And by the way, Tammy and I have proven to be a wonderful team. And I'm saying that with sincerity. Because years ago, I worked with a company called Talk America. We did an infomercial. And we made this book, and they called it Cooking with Kaplan. And I was embarrassed by it. We sold a lot of copies, but it was me leaning on a thing with like a kitchen. I am not a cook. Really, I hated that. I just wasn't even comfortable with it. So in the next program I developed, Transform, I created a book because I knew how important a recipe book was, and it was called Eat, Supportive Nutrition for the Body You Love. But I acknowledge these are not great tasting recipes, but these are, meal options. And through the years, I collected recipes, and I've made some things, and I've learned to make some things that taste really good. So I came out with metabolic meals, but Tammy brings it to life. If you just read my meals, you'd flip through it and you go, "Oh, maybe I'll try the tacos tonight." But when she does it, you want some. So I have to say, I feel a great chemistry in watching. I know that she did the hacks today. And she referenced that I once exploded hard-boiled eggs. It's not a joke. I didn't know eggs explode, but they do. And when they explode, they go on the ceiling. But now we have a threat. Tammy and I together, we were a team in a sense, and Billy, of course. But now there's a threat. Did anybody see Troy make the superhero sandwich today? Because, Tammy, how could we ever compete with that? If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. Troy makes, in real time, a superhero sandwich. Did anybody see it? If you haven't seen it, you need to. That's all I'll say. All right, so now you really don't have any excuses. I've given you strategies and tools. You have coaches. There is no excuse. Does anybody have an excuse? I challenge you to come up with one. They're gone. No more excuses. So this week you're doing the functional 6. You're familiar with it. It's 6 movements. Each movement incorporates a number of what we would typically call exercises. It's highly efficient. It gets the blood flowing. It gives you an endorphin rush. You could do it at any level. And the movements, as you now know, are broken into what I call stations. So the first 2 would be station 1, the next 2 would be station 2, and the next 2 would be station 3. And there's a very specific plan that's based on your category. So we use the terminology activity time and active relief time. Active relief time is the time between movements. You don't sit down, you don't lay down, you're moving, getting ready to do the next exercise. So the program is designed based on activity time active relief time between same station moves, and then active relief time between stations. You can download this from the files, this exact diagram, and with the information I'm giving you and a glance at it, it will make perfect sense to you. So the thoroughbred, for those of you who are joining for the first time, thoroughbred is somebody who's already fit and wants to be more fit, so the program is a little more challenging. So the thoroughbred will do 40 seconds of activity at a challenging pace, 10 seconds of active relief time between same station moves, and 20 seconds of active relief time between stations. So if we turn that into real life, the squat curl press is the first movement. If I'm working with a thoroughbred, I got a stopwatch, I'm setting it for 40 seconds, I'm saying ready, go. Now that thoroughbred is going aggressively because the thoroughbred is going at a challenging pace. If it's too easy, I'm going to say, give me that 12-pound medicine ball, here's a 20. We're going to make sure that that thoroughbred is challenged in that 40 seconds. Now, 40 seconds is up. I say stop, move to the next station. Within 10 seconds, he's got 10 seconds of active relief time between the same station moves. Within 10 seconds, he's got to be seated on that stability ball, dumbbells in hand, and then go, ready, go, 40 seconds. And now he finishes that. And now he's got 20 seconds to move to the next station. So that's how this works. So there's the thoroughbred who is already fit, wants to be more fit. The phoenix who was fit and kind of moved away from it and wants to get back in shape. And the chrysalis who has never really been what we would consider fit and is striving to be there. And everybody will find betterment, but the intensity of the program is different. So the phoenix, 30 seconds activity at a moderate pace. 15 seconds active relief time, 30 seconds active relief time between stations. And when we look at METs, when we look at energy output, it is so very different between just the thoroughbred and the phoenix. It may not look like much, you go only 10 seconds. It's a huge difference over the course of 5 or 10 minutes. And the chrysalis would do 30 seconds of activity at a modest pace, 15 seconds active relief time, but the chrysalis gets 45 seconds to recover between stations. All that you really need, stability ball, medicine ball, dumbbells, and resistance tubing. And if you don't have any of those, you can still find a way, and the coaches will show you options, alternatives. Holden was doing it today with a water jug. So there's no excuse. Has anybody thought of an excuse yet? I haven't seen one. So here's the simplicity of the routine. You will perform each movement for the designated amount of time prescribed for your type and stick to the active rest intervals as noted. Perform the routine every day. I say energy permitting because this replicates real-world movement. It aligns with what I call the divine architecture of the body. You're not putting excessive strain on any single muscle or joint, and your body should be able to recover within 24 hours and handle the workout again. If you are exhausted one day, don't do it because remember, we want to balance stress, load, and recovery. But assuming energy permits, you should do this routine every day. After you complete 2 circuits, staying within what I recommend for your type, you will then do 6 minutes of aerobic exercise at a modest pace. I know some of you are doing 30 minutes last week. Why would you go back to 6? Because the goal is to work all the systems of the body, allow the body to recover, and stimulate fat loss. And when we do that all-out burst, we access or release what are called catecholamines, epinephrine and adrenaline and norepinephrine and noradrenaline. And these play a vital role in the release and burning of fat. So as you'll soon understand, the idea here is not to burn fat during the aerobic exercise. The idea is to put the body in a state where it's willing to burn fat all day long. So we don't want to overtrain. We don't want to break down muscle. So you're going to give this your full attention and energy for a short duration. Within that 6 minutes of aerobic exercise, you will do an all-out burst. And with the thoroughbred, I'm going to say an aggressive all-out burst. Every all-out burst is aggressive because the idea is as hard as you can, as fast as you can. But I want you to really think about that as a thoroughbred. I mean, literally as hard as you can, as fast as you can for 12 seconds. So the intensity is super high. You're actually simulating the fight or flight response, which causes some very positive shifts, assuming that you recover afterwards. So I don't want you to think of it as, well, I could do 30 minutes, so I need to do 40. I want you to understand we're using different mechanisms. We're tapping into the nervous system. We're doing things to the endocrine system that will amplify fat burning. Now, day to day, if you feel energized, the thoroughbred can increase the challenge and the time by 2 minutes every day. But still, at first, stop at 6 minutes. Now, the all-out burst is amazing because it is the most incredible technique that I have ever witnessed for restoring parasympathetic recovery. And when Kristen and Dr. Bleiweiss and I did a seminar talking about the coronavirus and immunity, we spoke specifically about two systems, the immune system and the parasympathetic recovery system. When at Biohackers, we work to help people reverse chronic disease, one of the always is we've got to restore their parasympathetic recovery. And the all-out burst does it. Not by itself, as a part of the whole puzzle, but it's such an important part of it, and it goes against logic if you were led to believe that the more aerobic exercise I do, the more fat I will burn. You probably, if you've tried that strategy, it probably didn't work for the long term. So the idea here is for 12 seconds, you perform the repetitive cyclical exercise using the large muscle groups, whether you're running, pedaling, on an elliptical, as fast as you can, as intensely as you can, based on your perception. And then you cool down. So here are the variations. So that's your routine for the week. And it should be fun, and it should be familiar, and there are a whole lot of ways you can play with these exercises. They're not rigid in terms of the performance. That's why I'm telling you, watch your coaches this week. They're going to be really innovative with you. So here's what I showed you earlier. This week, to recompose, functional 6 routine, brief duration cardio with all-out bursts. Okay, check, right? We covered that. But the next one is where it gets interesting. Carbohydrate manipulation. I've said to you in the past, the area people are most confused is nutrition and diet, and it's this giant pendulum swing. You know, carbs are good, carbs are bad. Fat is bad, fat is good. Meats are good, meats are bad. And when you really understand the way the body works and the way the earth gives us food, you just learn to make better choices within a system that works, and that system is called circadian nutrition. So carbs are neither good nor bad. Bleached, processed sugars, those are energy disruptors, and they have no place in any healthful diet, but we shouldn't demonize carbs because some carbohydrates are bad. So when we eat, we don't eat specifically because we're going to lose weight from the foods we eat. We eat because we want to build healthy cells. Always, even when we're trying to lose fat. We eat because it gives us energy. We eat because it helps us restore and maintain our immune systems, and we eat for cellular health. So we don't want to stop eating. We're just going to make a shift. So we're about to bridge our way into phase 2 of what I've called circadian nutrition. In the first phase, you're eating in a manner that gets rid of the energy disruptors and allows you to speed metabolism, making the most natural food choices possible. In phase 2, we're going to manipulate carbohydrates to deplete glycogen, and I'll explain that in a moment, and amplify fat release. So I want you to understand, we're not starving, and we're not just eliminating, we're making a very important shift. So on select days, not every day, because every day will backfire, on select days, we will manipulate our carbohydrate intake to limit available glucose, which is your body's preferred source of fuel. So when we talk about your blood sugar, that is glucose that's in your bloodstream. And when you eat a meal and the meal has even healthful carbohydrates in it, whatever carbohydrates you need, you will utilize as fuel because they're there and accessible. And those that you don't immediately need, you will store in the muscles and or the liver as what is called glycogen. So glycogen is simply stored glucose waiting until you need it. So let's think about your muscles and your liver as an energy reserve, as a fuel tank. And in that fuel tank, you have stored glucose. So as you expend energy and you take sugar from your bloodstream, your blood sugar doesn't drop because you're releasing glucose from the muscles and from the liver, and you have this amazing way of maintaining balance. Now, if you are somebody who's moved to insulin disruption or a blood sugar regularity, then you have a maladaptation here. In most cases, it's fully reversible. But I'm talking about a normal metabolism. Your body is burning glucose because it's right there, it's accessible, and as you burn it, you release more, so you maintain blood sugar. So as long as you have lots of glucose available, your body has no need to burn stored fat. It's got all the fuel it needs. In an aerobic state, I don't mean like Florida would be an aerobic state, New York wouldn't. I mean in an aerobic physiological state, a state where you're meeting the demand for oxygen, which would be if you're pedaling a bike, but it would also be if you're sitting on your couch. Anytime you're meeting the demand for oxygen, as opposed to doing an all-out burst or a push-up, your body has two options for fuel. It could burn fat or it could burn sugar, glucose. Glucose is right there and ready. So as long as it has available glucose, it's not going to tap into your stored body fat. So by manipulating carbohydrate intake, we're going to attempt to reduce the fuel in your glucose fuel tank. Does that make sense? With reduced glycogen present, we then coax the release of fatty acids, which are the fats that are stored in fat cells, into the bloodstream, so then we can burn them. So this is really important to understand. We don't melt fat. I've seen ads that's for supplements. They go, melt fat with this new product. Fat doesn't melt. Butter melts, but fat doesn't melt. It's a two-step process. First, you have to release it, and then you have to burn it. So if you don't release it from the cell, there's no way that you're going to burn it. So we're using a strategy that is used in Hollywood by the celebrity trainers who get people ready for movies. It is used by bodybuilders, by physique athletes. It is the manipulation of energy substrates, the manipulation of carbohydrates. Now, in some cases, they will go to an extreme, which you're not going to do. Because typically, they're trying to look good on one day or for one movie, and then if you see them 2 months later, they don't look the same. And we want you to get better and better and better. We don't want you to have a rebound. But the strategy itself is the secret. So on protein days, on select days, you're going to not consume the starchy carbohydrate. No sweet potato, no quinoa, no grains. I said earlier, if you really want to do this right, it helps to understand how fat is burned. So I just said it's a two-step process. An adipose cell is a fat cell with a membrane. And what moves into the cell to give it size and shape would be 3 fatty acids with a glycerol bond. So that would technically be called a triglyceride. And that fat cell is now very content to just stay there. And the longer it's there, the more it builds up a network of microvessels and capillaries, and it could stay there for the rest of your life. It's not in any hurry to give up those fatty acids. And although when I was in college, the science to that date said we cannot add fat cells, we now know better. You can absolutely add fat cells. So if you have more fat on your body than you'd like, you have more of these 3 fatty acids with a glycerol bond inhabiting cell membranes. In order to burn those fatty acids, we've got to get them out of the cell into the mitochondria of the muscle cell. The mitochondria is the power center of the cell. So this is why I'm telling you it's a two-step process. First, we've got to release it, break the bond, have free fatty acids now traveling in the bloodstream, and then we need what I call mitochondrial hunger. The muscle cell must want for energy, and not have available glucose. And that's when it sends out the signal in the little protein messengers to bring it fats. So when I say create the ideal condition for fat burning, that's what we're talking about here. The ideal exercise condition creates mitochondrial hunger. So when you're doing your functional 6 and your short duration cardio and your all-out burst, that's what you're doing. You're creating an energy demand. And now by manipulating carbohydrates, you're saying to those mitochondria, I know that you're used to me giving you all this glucose, but I'm not going to give you so much anymore. And that's when the fat starts to leave the cell. Now, this is really important. An imbalance between stress and recovery backfires completely and drives the body to store fat. So don't fall into the trap of thinking you need to exercise more. It will backfire in the long term. Might you lose more weight? Yeah, but you're going to lose water and you're going to lose muscle. So follow this exactly as it's laid out. Mitochondrial hunger and glycogen depletion. That's the key to making this work. I know Tammy's getting ready to prepare some protein day meals. So know that term, protein day. We are aiming for glycogen depletion. Normally, you eat a meal that contains a potato or some rice, some jasmine rice, some whole grain, and that gets stored in the muscles and liver as glycogen. And you're expending glycogen throughout the day, and you're having a meal, and you're putting it back. Well, now what's going to happen is on a protein day, you're not putting it back. So you're expending glycogen, you have that fuel, but you're not refilling the glycogen stores. So the idea is to get to that point of glycogen depletion, where the muscle mitochondria is going, hey, I need some more fuel. Sorry, ain't got no more. How about some fat? So I know that there's this real kind of paradox in that you've heard, calories in versus calories out. If you eat fewer calories than you burn, you will lose weight. Here's the way to really just put this in perspective. If you were to eat 2,000 calories a day of lean proteins, good quality natural carbohydrates, and vegetables, would your body look and feel the same at the end of a year as if you ate 2,000 calories a day of Oreo cookies and Ben & Jerry's Chubby Hubby? No, of course not. So it can't just be about calories. And if we take in too few calories, we slow metabolism down. So this is the flaw with every conventional diet. If you're looking at your screen, I'm not suggesting you should eat 2,000 calories a day. I'm only using these numbers for illustration. But let's assume that somebody consumes 2,000 calories a day. So on average, at the end of a week, they would take in 14,000 calories. Now they go to a diet center and they go, okay, we're going to put you on the 1,200 plan and you're going to lose weight. We're going to sell you these little packages of food and we're going to give you a menu. Say you're only going to eat 1,200 calories. Well, at the end of a week, we've almost cut their calories in half. It is a severe drop. So the thyroid starts to change production of thyroid hormones. Metabolism starts to slow down because your brain doesn't understand what you're doing. It just thinks you can't get to enough food. It's trying to protect you from starving. And you sacrifice muscle tissue and you lose water weight, and it's a trick. But in the long run, you're slowing metabolism down. So if you look at the bottom line here, on a protein day, you remove the starchy carb. You remove the oatmeal, the potato, the sweet potato, the tomatoes, the corn, whatever you've been using as a starchy carb, the rice. So you're taking in fewer calories. However, you're going to increase the serving of protein by about 25%. You don't have to weigh and measure, but just visibly increase the protein serving by about 25%. So you might put an extra egg in your omelet. So it's not a radical drop in calories, it's a slight drop in calories. So this is a technique called the caloric stagger, where every other day would be a protein day. This is not what we're going to do, but for illustration, it makes it clear. So if on Monday you ate metabolically, on Tuesday you had a protein day, Wednesday metabolically, Thursday protein day, at the end of the week you've expended glycogen and not replaced all of it, but the caloric drop is not great. I mean, it is good because it's not severe. It's slight. And every other day you're reassuring your body so it doesn't slow metabolism. Now, when I said the secret of the Hollywood stars and the bodybuilders, the secret is this: 3 protein days in a row. 3 protein days in a row. Now, here's why. The first day, you have stored glucose, glycogen, from yesterday's meals. So you feel fine. You've got access to all of this glucose. So your mitochondria are going, feed me, feed me, feed me, and the liver and the muscles keep dumping their glycogen into the bloodstream. But then you come to the second day, and somewhere midway through that day, you hit glycogen depletion. The muscles are going, hey, what's going on? Where's my glucose? And the muscles and liver are going, we don't have any. And glycogen depletion is not always fun because your brain feeds off of glucose. So usually at that point of glycogen depletion, you forget how to do math. You know, that's when you kind of get up from your desk and walk into the other room and you go, what did I come in here for? Or you just find yourself staring and somebody's calling your name and you go, huh? Because the non-vital functions of your brain are trying to conserve energy because they don't have fuel. But the good news is, now you're releasing more fat. And the third consecutive protein day, you will be irritable. That's the bad news. But the good news is, because you have no available glycogen, you're sending fat direct into those mitochondria, and it is getting burned up, and it's not coming back. So this is the strategy. This is the secret strategy. Now, when you get to 3 protein days in a row, which we're not going to do immediately, the day after the third protein day is a really great day. We call it a super compensation day. And on that day, not only do you put back the slow-release carbohydrates, but you put in 25% more. And your muscles literally suck it up in a good way. You don't get fat. You get fuel. And you feel amazing, and your energy is amazing, and your alertness is amazing. You just feel recovered. So it's almost worth going through that third protein day to get to that super compensation day. And then you finish out the week metabolic eating, and then you would do it again the next week. Okay, so that's the effective strategy. So on a protein day, the protein serving is about 25% larger. And basically, it's the protein and the fibrous carb. Now, essential fats are important here. So salmon would be a very, very good protein choice because it's high in the essential fatty acids. For those who will eat sardines and mackerel, it's a very good time to eat those. But no slow-release carbohydrates. So here's how the next 2 weeks are going to look. Tomorrow you'll do a metabolic eating day, but based on what I told you, prepare for Wednesday, knowing that Wednesday is going to be your first protein day. And Wednesday is just a practice. It's not going to really count for very much. You're not going to hit glycogen depletion, but it's a warm-up. It's a practice to see if you've got it down and how you feel. Most people will do fine on that first protein day. Thursday, go back to metabolic eating. Then on Friday and Saturday, 2 protein days. Now, I'll tell you this. I haven't possibly made it sound worse than it is. I'm giving you a worst-case scenario because some people go, no, I have no problem with it. But there are those who really do get headaches and irritable. So I'm giving you worst-case scenario and telling you if you really want to lose fat, it's worth it because it's temporary and it really works to lose fat. So Wednesday, protein day, Thursday, metabolic eating, and then you'll try 2 protein days in a row. And then just 2 more metabolic eating days. Don't do a super compensation day this week. You're not ready for it. You haven't gone into true depletion. But now, come next Monday, we'll talk again, and I'm going to ask you guys how you did, And those of you who are ready, you're going to do 3 protein days in a row, followed by a super compensation day. Then 3 protein days in a row, followed by a super compensation day. And you're going to find that you're losing fat. Do not get on the scale. Do not get on the scale. Some of you are going to want to because you're going to go, my clothes are fitting differently. This is great. I want to get on the scale. But here's the reason you shouldn't. The scale is very stupid, and the scale cannot tell you anything other than how much you weigh under gravity at a given moment in time. So on the 3rd protein day, you're depleted of glycogen. Glycogen attracts water, so you're depleted of water. Not in the long term, just in the short term, because glycogen in the muscles and in the liver is like a sponge that pulls in water. And your muscles are predominantly water. So you may get on the scale on your 3rd protein day and weigh like 6 pounds less. And you'll get synthetically excited. You go, oh my God, this is great. I lost 6 pounds. Then you have the super compensation day, and now your muscles pull in that glycogen and draw in that water, and now you're 5 pounds heavier than you were the day before. So don't get on the scale. It can't tell you anything. Just trust that this is a process toward losing fat. So on a protein day, you'll have 4 meals, just like you have been, but you'll remove the slow-release carbohydrate. The protein serving should be 25% larger. If you can't get to a meal, a protein shake is an alternative, but only one. You should have at least 3 meals, and if you want to have 3 meals in a protein shake that is free from sugar, okay. Eliminate starchy carb. Make sure you get fibrous carbs in every meal, and I'm encouraging you to supplement with essential fatty acids. I've told you that every week. But now they become really important because they are protein sparing. If your body feels like it needs more fuel, it might choose to break down muscle to try to grab some amino acids because it can convert them into glucose. So if you take some essential fatty acids as a supplement, it will have that fuel source instead. So on a protein day, you could have your fish fillet, you could have the mixed veggies, but you're not having the sweet potato. You're just removing the starchy carb. Up until now, I've told you to try to do without coffee. I hope you've listened to me, because if you're a coffee drinker and you've done without coffee, now you're going to love this. Caffeine increases thermogenic activity, and it can increase fat release. If you are drinking coffee every day, caffeine will have no effect on you. It will not aid in fat release because you've developed a tolerance. But if you don't drink coffee or you've stopped drinking coffee, 100 to 200 milligrams a day can be more for thoroughbreds. In the morning on a protein day can really amplify fat release. For those of you who are familiar with the Thrive product, it has a very natural source of caffeine, and that's a big part of why it's so effective in helping people burn fat. Not the only part, but it's a really synergistic formula. So whatever form you get the caffeine in a fat-burning phase, it is advantageous to use caffeine if you don't normally use it. Is it a need? Absolutely not. But there is an opportunity here. So supplement with an essential fatty acid. You can get fish oil capsules or krill oil or cod liver oil. You can get a liquid. You could use coconut oil, which is an incredible superfood. And the protein day, once you do one, and that's why you're doing a practice, is really simple. So it's a really powerful shift in the way that you eat for a really powerful shift in the way you recompose. Tammy, I know that you're going to be coaching them through some protein meals. You can pretty much look through any of the meals that Tammy has already prepared and just remove the slow-release carbohydrate. So, some of you are going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But once you understand it, it really becomes simple. The only challenge is, as I said, sometimes late in the 2nd protein day and the 3rd protein day, your energy wanes, you feel tired, you just don't feel as alert. But when you get to that point, you know the super compensation day is coming, and I promise you, you will feel great. Any thoughts, comments, questions about anything at all? By the way, I love the fact that nobody was able to come up with a single excuse. The exercise routine is the functional 6. You'll customize it toward you based on everything I shared and everything the coaches share in the week ahead. Do not overdo the cardio. If everything I said makes sense, then this will make sense as well. Starting with 6 minutes, the thoroughbred can increase 2 minutes a day, short duration with an all-out burst. The workout routine every day, there is a slight metabolic advantage doing it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Do you have to change your whole life around to make sure you work out first thing in the morning? No, but honestly, what else are you doing right now? So this is a good time. Remember, I told you in 30 days you can become a morning person. 3 to 4 equally spaced metabolic meals. On protein days, you remove, it should say that's wrong. It should say remove the starchy carbohydrate component and increase the protein serving by 25%. Okay, so please don't look at this slide anymore, ever, because it is an error. On select days, protein days, remove the slow-release starchy carbohydrate component. Include the fibrous carbohydrate. You can supplement with vitamin C, vitamin D3, essential fatty acids, and immune boosters. You can practice creative tension. The creation of your own creative tension. You want to sleep. Not all day, but 8 hours would be really good. You want to drink lots of water. You want to feel great. You want to be energized. You want to share this with people. You want to connect with other human beings the best you can, whether it's Zoom, telephone, through the window, across the street, from a distance. I yell at my neighbors from yard to yard. We find new ways. But you must have human contact. It doesn't mean physical touch, but you've got to laugh with people. And you've got to find ways to express love. And whether you're listening to frequencies, meditations, ohms, or your favorite songs, recognize that there's virtue in music and recovery. And still, we've got 34 days to go. So anybody that you know that should be a part of this group needs to get an invitation from you. All right, I'm looking forward to hearing from and seeing everybody. Dr. Kristen Camella, Dr. Bleiweiss, Dr. Brasilia, Troy, Holly, Flexen, what's his name? Flexen Holden? Holden, but there's like a nickname there. Is it Flexen Holden? Is that who you are? Now that we're all superheroes. Jim Beatty, yes, Flexen Holden. Jim Beatty, getting outside. Everybody's staying inside except when you're outside, and being outside except when you have to go back inside. This should be a lot of fun. We have 34 days to crush it. 34 days to become your absolute best. Continue to post and comment and ask questions and invite your friends and smile and laugh and sleep and drink water and do all the things I told you, and you're going to amaze yourself and all your friends. Until we speak again, be better, everybody. Have a great night.